But I'm here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly right. We'd have waited until 10 after. Maybe 15.
Just for you.
Just for me, thank you.
Mary Claire, how many fingers am I holding up?
5.
Okay, everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes? You got a motion?
Move her.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Open up with a public hearing on a conditional use permit for the 12-month review for Hop and Barrel Brewing Company, Justin Turby's, to operate a brewery at 310 2nd Street. Excuse me. Is there anybody here that would like to speak during this public hearing? Anybody like to speak at the public hearing? Anybody like to speak?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a conditional use permit 12-month review for Hop and Barrel Brewing Company, Justin Turby's, to operate a brewery at 310 2nd Street.
Thank you. It's been 12 months since the application. Since that time, the business has been up and running. We've had no complaints that I've been aware of specific to the CUP. Staff recommends approval with the condition that this not be reviewed again unless there's an issue.
My only thought on reviewing it again, I mean, there's just so much activity downtown, but I mean.
If something arises, we reserve that ability
Right.
to bring it back.
I'll move to approve with those restrictions and recommendations.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing on a conditional use permit 12-month review for Hudson YMCA to have a temporary use structure at 2211 Vine Street. Is there anybody here that would like to comment in the public hearing on this? Anybody like to speak? Would anybody like to speak?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on a conditional use permit for 12-month review for Hudson YMCA to have a temporary use structure at 2211 Vine Street.
The storage container is still on the site behind the fence within the skate park area. The YMCA does not have any intent to bring any more containers in or do anything else. In fact, they'd like to incorporate the container into apparatus for the skate park. It hasn't been an issue. It's not visible from outside. Similarly, I would recommend approval without needing to review it again.
My only comment was,
That's okay, go ahead.
We can keep
my only comment was, I thought when we originally approved that this was going to be a temporary structure. It wasn't going to be permanent.
Yeah, and the thought is now that it will be permanent as a part of the ramps and what they're building out there, make it part of the park. And it's a nice storage solution for them to solve some of those needs, as well as have, they did the teen center addition to the side of that building, so now it's, they have what they need.
Now I'll move to approve.
I haven't seen what it looks like, and I didn't get a chance to get up there, but I'm concerned about the look of having a storage container there.
It looks, I was there for the Rotary meeting last Wednesday morning, and it looks totally appropriate in the skate park in the way that they've got it. It doesn't look out of place. I'll put it that way.
A lot of that stuff's kind of industrial, and like you have the rails and the ramps, and it's pretty cool.
And they intend to have it if the new teen center building they built here in the main entrance is right here. The trailer is to the south, and to have that as a platform that takeoff ramps would take off from there.
Is this something you would see possibly happening with another business that could possibly say, well, you did it for the YMCA?
I don't, this is so unique. It's specific to that use, and if it was another 12 months in just temporary storage, then it might be a different conversation, but to incorporate it with the skate park, I think is a totally different discussion.
Is there anyone from the Y here tonight?
I think so. I met with him on site a week ago.
Are we talking about it remaining a CUP or going off?
It would remain a CUP, and if there's an issue, again, we would revisit it if we need to.
I'll second your motion.
We got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a certified survey map at Annabelle Way submitted by Hanson Brothers. XII LLC.
This is an outlot it's a parcel of property just behind the old banquet facility, going up and right behind the new Holiday Inn Express. Basically, what this does is it prepares it for future development applications, rezoning applications. It's a straight subdivision. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Has that always been part of the plan once we released them from that contract?
The Hanson Brothers?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be a development parcel, yes. Yes. For what? We don't know yet. It's included in their development plans and in their PRD or PCD.
Is it zoning a commercial, or what are they doing?
We don't have an application yet.
So he's just requesting it to be split
First,
off?
yep, for subdivision, yep.
And then what? He could come and say, well, okay, we subdivided it, so they're going to sell it?
Yeah, they'd sell it
Two
off.
separate parcels?
One. The outlot 2 wouldn't be buildable. So outlot 2, so there's lot 4, that would be your buildable, your development parcel, and Angela's here too, she can. No, you're fine, go ahead, do you want to go up to and kind of explain?
Okay. So basically, when this all developed, or was platted, I guess, through MI Homes, the portion that you're looking at ended up just getting to be unplatted area. So what they did, it was just a large parcel in this area. So what we're doing now is actually dedicating road right-of-way for Annabelle Way, which is actually already under construction, and then platting this portion of land into a lot 4, and then an outlot, which the outlot is steeper slopes and trees, and will be dedicated to Gagnon's, or given to the Gagnon parcel, which actually is township, in the township. So that's why we couldn't just add that piece to their existing lot, but we have a separate outlot that will be dedicated to them. But this one larger lot then would be platted. And I don't know if I heard all, if I kind of came in half through the questions, so if anyone has any questions regarding that.
Outlot 2 would go to the Gagnon property,
Yes,
and the Gagnon property is township.
yes,
Correct.
but it would be added to their property.
But it would be in the city.
But yes, it has to be, yes, it has to be just platted separately, because yes, it would still remain in the city boundaries versus added to township boundaries. So we want to keep that still in the city and not change city lot lines or city boundaries, obviously.
So you're talking about the Gagnon property that is faced on Carmichael?
That's on, yes, the
Contiguous
directly
to that, yeah.
north of the property, contiguous, so.
If you're standing on the T-box on Old 18,
Yeah.
Gagnon's is on your left.
The white,
Right.
yes.
They own Mark Johnson's old house.
Which T-box were you on?
Not T-box, the green.
The green,
The
yep.
T-box. No, I'm on the T-box for the Old 18.
From the tips? That's what I was
But
wondering.
no, all the land to your,
Oh, the blues or the whites or the?
Yeah.
the white picket.
So why is that going to them?
Right now, basically, all of what's in here is, as I said, is trees, it's steep slopes. There is basically there's agreement between the two property owners that that they would look to dedicate that to them. So
Drainage is part of it.
yeah, well, exactly. It's again, we will not develop that, or didn't want. It wasn't part of the lot to be developed. It provides a greater buffer to those residential homes in the town, or the existing residential homes. And
So there was an agreement between whom?
Gagnon's and Hanson's.
When?
When the way the golf course came together was Hans Hagen bought the land, some of the land that was needed from Gagnon's, and then had an agreement with Mark, and then did it was a 1035 exchange to the golf course for the property. So that's how Gagnon got in the chain, excuse me, of title that way. We got it, golf course got it from them, now it's going
Just
back
reverting back.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just houses going in there?
At this time, it is not. No, we are looking maybe potentially the next step of rezoning this property. Again, when MI came in, they rezoned their golf course as residential. That may be the next step. Obviously, we would have to petition, bring forward a comp plan amendment and rezoning. It is currently single family, so depending on how that goes, we can either do single family or look for a comp plan amendment and rezoning.
It is single family now?
It's in the PRD.
But so if you were to rezone it, you're talking about multifamily?
That's what we're considering. But obviously, that'd have to come before you and have public hearing to
Sure.
determine if that's the direction. Probably the most important piece is getting the road dedicated.
And showing the easements for those
Sanitary
sewer interceptor, yep. There's a sanitary sewer line that runs along the kind of the southern part of that property.
Yep, there's a sanitary.
One of the conditions or recommendations for a condition on this is that those easements be shown and notated on the CSM so that we can get access as a city to the manholes down towards the retention pond, which is located further to the west. West-northwest, I guess.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Are you familiar with the course in your mind's eye?
Very much so.
The old 11 green
Yeah. No, I
is
see where it's
almost
at.
right underneath that number 2
Yeah.
on outlot, on the drawing for outlot 2.
No, I get it all,
Yeah.
believe me. And plus, I mean, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm coming in late, obviously, on the whole discussion on what was going to happen on that golf course, but was there any discussion about how that land was going to be used when the deal was first done?
That's actually how it was always shown in the master plan, was that this was going to be a multifamily house or the multifamily unit. In all of the documents that were brought forward and the layouts that were shown, that was always shown as multifamily.
I would challenge that. I'd like to see that before we would.
Yeah,
for sure know that.
and I will bring forward all that when we decide to do the comp plan amendment and rezoning.
Well, you wanted to give it to the city once as parkland.
Not in this area, I don't, no.
Yeah.
Down below here, where it meets up with Stone Pine, further, yeah, it's right off the maps. This area was all considered to be parkland, or was what was offered as parkland at one point.
If I recall, there was no high density towards the back of the clubhouse ever mentioned.
Oh, that's where it was always shown. However, with MI Homes, they brought forward everything, so it just kind of all got thrown in as as residential, but that's fine. I would bring that forward when we talk about comp plan amendment and rezoning.
Or no? Have you guys, city staff, done anything in any way with it?
You know, at this point, it's like Angela stated, it's a subdivision. It's a simple CSM that meets our requirements, assuming that those easements get listed on there.
I want to know if it's the original plan. We don't have those documents. Otherwise, something doesn't feel right with this. Just my opinion.
We can postpone if you'd like.
I would like to see the master original.
I have.
So who owns the property right now? Hanson's?
Hanson.
So I would move to postpone this to our next available meeting.
And you want just a historical perspective on what?
I want to see the original master plan submitted that actually started us to go ahead and release them from the contract.
Okay.
No, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on application for a certificate of compliance and certificate of design review for DD's Ice Cream at 403 Vine Street. Gregory Ray. Step forward, I guess. Come on up. If you would identify yourself and what your address.
My name is Greg Ray, and I'm owner
Hey, Greg, can you? Okay.
of the property since '88, '89, and what I'd like to propose is an ice cream stand within an existing building for pedestrian traffic only. Walk-up ice cream to strictly dish and serve, and pedestrian traffic would be of the utmost safety for those patrons. It is a high priority for both me and tenant, and I'm sure the city. So there'll be basically designated parking areas by way of striping the driveway, and I think you must have a plan and reviewed it. So we'll be using movable barriers like planter boxes, and also a curb stop, if you will, at the handicap parking place along with the sign. So strictly simply dishing and serving ice cream for that reason only, and there will be no food prep, and it'll be seasonal operation from basically May to September, and the hours will probably be roughly noon to 7 or something of that nature. I guess there'll be, according to Elliott Architect, there's 2 dumpsters there now. It'll be reduced to 1, and there's a designated spot at the northwest corner of the property, which will have its poured concrete pad, pilasters, or whatever you call it, have a screening. There'll be parking stripes put in for that tenant as well. So I guess there'll be some concrete replacement in the existing asphalt so that it's a level surface for patrons to walk. There'll be a picnic table, perhaps, by that existing sign pole. And the planter boxes will be moved daily so that the tenant that is there now, Valley Services, can operate as they normally do up until opening time at noon. After that, the planting boxes will be put in position and prohibit traffic through that driveway. So I guess I'll open it up for questions.
Go ahead.
On the other end toward the alley, originally when that was approved to put the salon in there, there was a fence there.
Correct.
that went out toward the alley.
Correct.
The fence disappeared.
Yeah, it was decrepit.
It was decrepit,
Yeah.
but there was supposed to be bumpers put in there at the time. The
No,
bumpers weren't put in.
I guess, Frank, I don't know what you're referring to because I never seen a directive on that.
You never saw what?
A directive for me to put bumpers in.
Okay, and at the time, the parking was at the edge of the building. What you're proposing is to move it back close to the property line now, which then will block access into the house.
Well, I think if you look at the, what you probably have.
I have.
It's a good 10 feet from your existing concrete slab, and it looks like the fence that you had put up. And the idea is for people to pull in and park, and then when they back up back towards the southwest, to turn into the alley to go out. So this is to scale, 1/8 by is 1 foot. So I'm guessing there's,
You're saying the north end then of the parking stalls you have drawn on here are going to be 10 feet from the property line?
8 to 10. I don't have a scale, but it sure looks like it to me.
Well, I looked at it, it's probably 2.5.
No, it's 1/8 inch per foot. I mean,
You're
if there,
seeing the difference between reality and the drawing.
Yeah.
oh, I haven't actually measured it, but I guess we can move that back. I guess what could be done is surveyed so we know where the property line is exactly.
Good luck. Okay.
And is it, I'm guessing, close to your existing concrete or not?
No, that's actually back a little further. I think what we need to do is actually take a look at this beyond these drawings, because based on the drawings, it's not real good. And this morning when I went out and looked at the front where you're going to park and the overhead door, at that time, Mike did not know that his door would be blocked.
Well, are we talking over on the other side of the building now?
Now, yes, out front.
Okay, I guess what Mike's concern are as my tenant is basically between Mike and myself. I have a lease agreement till April, and he had an option to sign into that with the amendments on there. And really, I don't think this is part of what I'm here for, but that agreement that he chose to sign into, because I simply said we wouldn't need a lease then, meaning that anything can happen.
So you've resolved all your issues with Mike?
Yeah, I talked
this
to Mike.
morning when I saw him, they weren't.
I talked to Mike this afternoon. And again, it's my tenant and my lease agreement, but in the amendment that I gave him, it states that, first of all, his lease term would be from April 1st this year to March 31st, 2019. His rent is such, and then the reduced square footage to allow space for additional tenant, me, share unisex toilet in the shop area, and move dumpsters, of which now has been reduced to 1. I'm not sure if he's aware of that yet. And then it says abide and accommodate by city and state recommendations to allow for the ice cream stand tenant space. Architect's conceptual plans, certificate of compliance, and permit guidelines will be abided by both parties. So he had an option to sign into it, and here's his signature. So that's between Mike and myself. I really don't see where that has...
This morning when I saw him, there was a question because I was worried about safety with your area where your customers would be and right in front of the overhead door, which he uses. That was my concern this morning when I looked at it.
Right, and he and I had a previous conversation about that, which I reiterated today in our phone conversation. And I told him that what my hours would be, and that overhead door would not be accessible. And he and I mean, whether he agreed to it or not, he didn't say he didn't disagree or he didn't say he agreed, because he didn't know, just like myself, what might be handed down in this meeting. But he has signed into the terms that we both have to abide by what you people tell us. So again, safety is first and foremost. He's expressed it, I've expressed it, and I know the city wants it. And nobody wants a lawsuit. So even though there's a drive there, the overhead door will not be used, and nor will any access of vehicle in that area once the hours are open for the ice cream stand.
Mary Claire?
I have a question. So, so currently I haven't seen any striping. So when
No, it
several
hasn't
times,
been done yet.
I understand that. But my point is, so several times when I've driven by, cars are kind of parked kittywampus.
Right, that's
kind
why
of
we're striping it.
all over. So safety, like Frank, is my number one concern, because if there's going to be youth or young people walking up to get ice cream, that's a huge issue. And so with the striping, though, what does that do with the number of parking spaces that will eventually be there? And then how does that impact how many parking spaces need to be there?
It's zone B3 and it's under 6,000 square feet, so they're exempt from on-street
The whole
parking.
building or just the
Correct.
ice cream place?
The whole building.
Okay.
It's 3,000-ish square feet.
Okay.
So let's go back to the parking spots again.
Okay?
You may want to, I mean, I would prefer to resolve that because I don't want that parking going back that far. But I think that's not what was agreed to originally.
So this fence is no longer there, which is on Exhibit East elevation? That white fence is gone?
No, that is
No, it's
there.
there.
That is there.
Yeah, it's showing on the,
That's mine. That's
That's
mine.
your fence, okay. But I mean, still, I mean, in terms of getting access into the alley, all of that, you know, I guess, do we have a drawing of how the striping will be?
Well, the hairdressers aren't leaving, right? No, hairdressers aren't leaving. They're gonna stay on their end the way they
They're
are
staying.
now. What we're talking about is the ice cream shop on the other end?
You're talking about
In the middle?
Yeah, in the middle section, yeah.
the use, the certificate of compliance for the middle section, correct?
So it's 4 parking stripes, 4 parking spots?
Correct.
or, yeah.
There's always more than 4 cars there when I've driven
See,
by.
it's kind of mayhem, because people
It
just
is.
pull in and park anywhere.
They do.
So we're trying to get some structure
Mm-hmm.
where people can park and where they can't park.
So you're adding a handicap parking stall that's not currently there?
No, the handicap is where the curb stop is, right in front of the building.
There is no handicap there now, though.
No,
No.
there isn't, that's new.
No, it'll be as it's drawn here. It'll be applied
Okay.
with that curb stop. And quite honestly, if those 4 spaces are occupied, they're going to have to park along the street that's been given to us since the street utility.
The hang-up I have with it is on approval of your plan, is that the only hang-up I would have, primarily now after you've apparently resolved with your tenant, which I didn't know you had this morning, from the safety standpoint, would be how far these go back toward the property line.
You're talking about the 4 parking spaces?
And where exactly is that property line? But my guess, my estimate would be right on the building wall, right?
Right. That is my guess.
So how much space is there then between that wall and like if,
I'm
You're trying to
recommending,
back
I'm
up.
recommending at least 5 feet from,
Because if you're trying
that'd be
to
what
back
code would
up-
prescribe. Granted, this site is so unique in that it is entirely built out, it's entirely concrete. So you're trying to do the best with what you got.
Originally, when this was done, the edge of the building of that bump out was where the fence was, and that's where the parking stopped.
Okay.
Now, according to this, it would move back another 8 feet beyond where that fence was.
From the bump out.
Right.
But they're still within that driveway area that goes to that big door, right?
It's right now,
Right now, there's a big.
On the north
on
end of
north-
the door.
There's a big door there on
it's
the
not
east
used.
end.
Yeah, that door is not used. That's,
Yeah, but no, I'm saying, I'm just trying to, in my mind's eye,
Right.
picture where you're
Right.
saying it's right by that big door.
Scale,
Scale that east elevation picture. You can see there's a black car parked up in front of it. You can see where the door is.
Yeah, that's what
And then look at where the tip of the north end of those proposed parking stalls are, and just come straight out from that.
So how far
But-
forward would that black car be where it is, or would it be closer to the fence?
It would be all the way, according to this drawing, it would be all the way to the edge of the door.
To the edge of the door.
Of the overhang door?
Right.
If I was to guess, that's a condenser in front of that overhead door, which is a sheetrock wall on the inside. I would guess that's at least 5 feet from the corner, or the edge of that building that we're talking about, if not 6.
That's an 8-foot door.
So basically, the cars would probably be lined up and looking like the
10.
black car.
This picture's not shot straight on.
It's not what, I'm sorry?
It's at an angle.
It's at an angle, right. I just want that resolved.
To address that issue, could you go to where that black car is and then do 4 bumper curves on those stalls?
I'm sorry, Mike, what?
If you had the 4 stalls backed it up to where that car is, which is effectively where everybody parks, right, currently.
Right.
And then put bumper curbs in so that there wasn't any emission creep.
Yeah, the reason I didn't put bumper curbs in, Mike, is for plowing.
Yeah, understood.
And they usually plow up to that condenser or that door. And with bumper stops there, it makes it impossible. I gotta, try my best with putting snow where I can.
So then this car and these.
Could you bump them back to that bump out so that you would have a
car
clean
wouldn't be here and those
through?
Because they just.
Do what again?
Handicap.
Move the parking stalls 6 feet south so that they're even with that bump out, the north wall, that bump out.
And then plow up to the doors.
Put the bumper curbs in and plow up to the doors.
Yeah, I guess. I see the stalls are 9 by 20.
Yep.
So, you're asking for a lane to push the snow, basically, right?
And then get the bumper curbs so that,
Yeah. And the bumper curbs are for what? Because we don't believe they're going to be within the stripes? I'm not understanding why we need.
well, I'm just saying, if it was as easy as just moving it, and if that alleviated the issue, I don't know if it does, it was a suggestion.
It's the girls' patrons, and I can simply ask that they police that and make sure that their customers stay within the confines of the striping. And simply 4 cars is not that much to police.
So how can, I'm just asking because you can see where this white car is parked and they park all along there, so.
It wouldn't be able to park there because
They're just gonna have to monitor that,
where that SUV is, that's got to be accessible for handicap.
right, I understand, but where the white car is and where
Yeah.
several cars sometimes kind of
They
line
won't
up
be able to
there.
park there. They'll have to go to the street.
So what you're giving them, you're taking them from the original. Originally, when it was approved, it was striped for 8 cars.
I'm not aware of any of that.
That's the way it was striped.
When-
You owned the building.
When it was
And
striped,
that was
when?
when the fence was in.
When was it striped, Frank?
Oh. How long have they been there?
Who striped it?
It was striped for 10 cars.
No,
Yes. But
it wasn't me, and I wasn't aware of it, and I've never seen it, so I didn't stripe it. I don't know. I didn't pay for anybody to stripe it.
There were stripes for that black car
yes.
as a customer of them.
Well, it wasn't.
Used to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was striped when the fence was in, when they were put in there.
Okay.
And it might have been the previous tenant to them when it was striped.
Oh, probably Jackie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were set up for 8 cars, and it was a joke because
Okay.
you couldn't turn them in.
Right.
But now what you're doing is you're reducing their parking to 4 spots.
Correct.
And they're good with that.
They don't know it yet, but they
Oh.
will. I mean, I'm the landlord, and
No, I understand
quite
that.
honestly, it's between me and them.
I just asked.
I mean, if this is agreed on, this is what we're doing.
Frank, would that do anything for you, what was suggested?
Yeah, if they put the bump stops in there and move it back to what Mike had recommended, then I don't have an issue with it.
Well, then
And
that's,
apparently, the issue I had this morning is resolved, or at least it was my concern that if they were going in and out of that overhead door with their delivery vehicles during the day while you were open serving people, then that's a safety issue.
Yeah, that is not gonna, it's gonna be striped, as it says, no parking. And there's gonna be planter boxes, and if need be, I'll add another one. I mean, I am, like I said, first and foremost concerned about everybody's safety. The last thing I want is somebody to get hurt. I'm doing this because I'm retiring and looking for something to do, and I want to serve smiling faces, and safety is a high priority. But I'm asking if there's some leniency as far as curb stops because of plowing and plowing only, as opposed to having me, can we try it with the stripes to see if it gets out of hand, and if you're not happy with it, we'll put the curb stops in.
Striping it back to where?
Like the car that's shown in the picture.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And if we have a problem with it, then we'll come back.
You have the ability to recommend conditions that include a time limit for the use or exist or operate. So you could review this
I can say this, that
if there's an issue.
striping will be the last thing I do. And mind you, I'm not opening till next May. I will lay this out with you, Frank. And then if Frank's happy,
Then I'm happy.
okay.
well, I would be concerned too. I don't
Right.
blame Frank, he's the neighbor. You guys want to exist together. We understand your landlord, we get that. But we have to look at it so you're not back here, or someone hasn't complained and come back here, what'd you let them do that for? Or somebody gets hurt, God forbid.
Right. So as far
Your
as,
business is your business. and
Right.
You've said that several different times.
yeah,
Don't care. But we're gonna get this right the
Right.
first time.
No,
So
I
you're not
understand.
coming back here.
yeah.
Let's bring it back to ice cream.
Yeah.
You know, in talking about safety and the overhead door, I think is a good point. I think at the minimum, you probably want 2 more planters on there. There's only one barrier from if somebody wants to make that right turn movement or left turn movement into what was accessible. Have 2 there and then 1 so that nobody can back up towards that overhead door and squeeze between the building and the planter in a pinch.
So a total of
5.
5?
If they're the same
3
size.
north and south, or 3
2
east and west?
east and west and 3 north and south.
Okay.
If they're the same size as indicated on the plan.
Yeah, they're going to be that size, 48 by 18 and 36 high. Matter of fact, I got a little picture of what, conceptually, what I'd probably, something, my wife picked that out. But, you know, it'll be something of that nature on caster wheels, probably with a little tote rope, and I'll be the one pulling them in and out. And I might go to plastic plants after a while. I don't know what the sun will do, but anyway.
The other pieces are, in the review, are the paint, so it's all the same color.
Right?
And then the proposed awning fixtures to identify the ice cream shop and the care company.
Correct.
Have you punched a hole through the wall already?
Well, the window's already in.
The windows are just rough set, and that was because the glass block was falling apart that's been there since 1928. They were patching with sheet metal and everything else, so I took the liberty of putting those in last fall, and again, you can see daylight around them. They're not permanently set,
Okay.
so
Building permit statement.
Where we at?
Well, did we change that the proposed parking stalls be no closer than 5 feet from the north property line? Did we change that number from 5 feet to something else?
I think what we were talking about was backing them up to, in that picture where that black car is.
That's science.
Huh? Right.
So yeah, so approximately within that first third or half of that overhead door, if I'm looking at it, I mean, that's fairly right on, pretty close. So
And then we talked about adding 2 more planters.
2 more planters,
Right?
in addition to the conditions as recommended.
And then the bumper
Working out with Frank.
Working
with the neighbors.
it out with their neighbors. It's more than, because there's other people that utilize that alleyway too.
Right.
Are you crafting a motion? Is that what you're trying?
Well, I think we were kind of crafting or redoing a little bit of the staff recommendation piece. So I think we've,
Which is included in your motion?
yes. So we've changed that.
I'll second it.
Okay, you got it, Emily?
Yep. I've been writing.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So does this, excuse me, does this come back to us, or do we assume that everything is being followed, or?
You can put a condition on it, just that it's up for review in 12 months. I think that might be reasonable considering.
I think first time, new business, that's not
I have to work
unusual
out
for us.
12 months?
Yeah,
Yeah.
work out, well, after you, I mean, on audit, you're not gonna be able to do it until you're starting this thing May of 19.
Right.
So it would be May of 20.
But I mean, that's not unusual for a new business
That's fine.
to have that process, so.
I'll accept that as a second.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody?
So do we just assume that this gets all worked out?
Yeah,
Well,
comes back.
it goes to full council, so
Right.
if there's issues.
Right.
My hope would be that that there would be a conversation had prior to it going to council on June 4th,
Yeah.
and that
I
can
think
be
we
worked
would,
out.
yeah, I think we would like to, I would like to see that resolved.
What's
That we
that?
know exactly where that line's gonna be
Right.
before it goes to city council.
As far as striping?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I'll be right there with you.
So maybe the
We'll
two of
work
you
it
can
out.
make that plan before June 4th.
With the other neighbors too that utilize that
Yes.
alleyway.
Question?
Yes.
Okay. We good? All those in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
What kind of ice cream are you going to serve?
Cedar Crest.
Ooh, good.
Chocolate peppermint, please.
No, Cedar Crust is very good. No, it's good.
That-
No, Italian ice cream is some people have asked me to look into, so I'm not sure. I forget the name of
Gelato?
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. With a S?
With a G.
How'd you say that?
Gelato?
Gelato with the G.
With a G?
Yeah. It's almost like a sherbet.
Yanni?
All right, discussion and possible action on concept development plans for MPSC World Headquarters at 2701 Harvey Street, MPSC Inc.
Okay, this one is really straightforward. MPSC Rinse and Chill is a company that exists currently on Swayze Street. They've outgrown that location, purchased property from the St. Croix Business Park. They're proposing a 23,400 square foot facility that would have about 7,200 square feet of office and about 16,200 square feet of warehouse space. Again, these are concept development plans. Staff really doesn't have a whole lot of comments at this point. Pretty straightforward project. Staff recommends approval with the conditions listed.
Move for approval.
I'll second it.
Got motion and second for approval. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action, excuse me, on concept development plans for River City Center at 109 2nd Street, River City Center LLC.
I'm going to ask Dan to come up and walk us through. It's a pretty complex and complicated project. I've also got Mr. Dave Schofield here. He's with SEH and is assisting in the development review as well as the riverway and floodplain review issues.
I couldn't figure out if the current tenants stay in or if this is a whole tear down and redo. I couldn't figure that out.
Current tenants stay in. It's just the redevelopment of that existing facility, correct?
Front and rear.
Front and back and sides.
Thought I saw them there.
Yep. I guess while I get set up, some of the highlights obviously are the addition of angled on-street parking on First Street, which isn't currently there. So it would be on
Their side of by the
on their
building.
side of the, yep. So that's 26 dedicated stalls. You're going to have, as mentioned, the complete facelift to the building. The redevelopment of that west and southwest area for additional parking. That's where currently the St. Croix Sailing School is. They've relocated as of last night. The council approved a lease agreement to move them to the end of Picnic Point and Lakefront Park, right next to the marina there. So they have a new home to operate out of, and then this site would be redone. So, Dan, do you want to go ahead?
All right.
I'm Dan Burnham, architect with Ayers Associates, and this is the existing River City Center, and we're going to redo, like Mike said, the area where the existing sailing school is at and have an ingress and an egress coming out of there, and redo this entire west side back parking lot, including 26 new angled stalls off of First Street that the city will have and own and have meters on. And along with that, they're in discussions with the ownership group of possibly putting meters on the very east side for the city on 2nd Street. And we would take out there's a ingress and egress in this middle here, and we'd remove that and widen the one that is adjacent right to the bank and have one in and one out off of 2nd Street, and widen the one that comes out on the Buckeye.
The parking is inside the lot, though, I'm sorry, not on the street.
The parking on this side is inside the lot. The ones off of First Street?
No, the discussions you had on 2nd Street are inside the lot.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, so then the middle in and out would be taken away.
Correct.
Yes.
So you're just going to have one
One
and on 2nd Street?
And two on Buckeye?
a little bit larger.
Correct.
We'll have the one that it currently exists, we're going to widen it out so we
Yes.
can get a right turn lane and then a left turn and then one in. So we'll have 3 lanes, 2 going out, 1 going in, that's next to that existing bank over
And
here.
then just the one on the Buckeye Street?
Two.
We'll have the one here because we've got such a grade difference, we're going to have a retaining wall. So then we'll have a second one here to get to this lower level parking that right now is just kind of a free-for-all. So we're going to put in curbs, stripe it, everything else, and then the new angled stalls off of First across from the boat launch.
From an access management perspective, eliminating that additional 2nd Street access is a huge deal. The state really appreciated that.
Yes. I mean, people stick out so far when you're trying to go down 2nd Street because they're
Yeah.
trying to get out.
David, do you want to run through kind of an overview of some of the approvals and the process? There's going to be a significant amount of process with this. Just
Yeah. If I could use your map, that would be, oh, got it. So we've talked a couple of times about riverway issues. Obviously, with the St. Croix River here, we're within the riverway district. The south side of the building here, there's 12% slopes right now that they're proposing to disturb for 2 reasons. Number one, to improve the parking in that area. Number two, as part of the river or the floodplain issues that we've addressed as well, there needs to be a dry land access from all of the lower level tenants out to Buckeye Street. And so In order to do that, there needs to be a retaining wall there needs to be a sidewalk there. So there's some disturbances of that 12% slope that need to be addressed regulatory-wise. So there's actually 2 conditional use permits that they'll be coming forward for and 2 variances. The variances obviously won't come to this body, but you should be aware of them. The 2 conditional use permits are the disturbance of the 12% slopes and the construction of a structural erosion control, which I'm calling a retaining wall, or they're calling a retaining wall. I'm calling a structural erosion control. Those 2 are conditional use permits that have to come before this body and then to council.
So those were the answers that were sent to the Riverway?
Yes.
Okay, so you did get a response finally, and that's
Yep.
hence why you're here now?
Yep. And then the other part of it that won't come to this body, but you should be aware of, is the existing building is actually below, the lower level of the existing building is below the 100-year floodplain. So if we had a 100-year flood or above, that lower level would be underwater. There'd be, I don't know, probably 8 inches of water in that basement. The code says anytime you alter or construct a building, in this case obviously it's an alteration because the building exists, you have to bring it into compliance with the floodplain code, which is year code 253, I think state code 115. That requires it to be 2 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So as they're right now they're below it, they'd have to raise it up by approximately 3 feet to get out of the, get 2 feet above the floodplain. They've had some it's very difficult to comply with that requirement. So they're going to be asking for a variance to allow it to be above the floodplain, but not 2 feet above the floodplain. The second part of that is that the dry land access is supposed to be 1 foot above the floodplain. So if you imagine, if we've got it right at the flood elevation, the 100-year flood elevation, and someone had some sort of a health emergency and you needed to get them out of there, you don't want to be trying to drag them upstairs into the 2nd story or getting them on a boat somehow. You want to be able to walk a gurney in there and get them out into a waiting ambulance. So the dry land access is supposed to be 1 foot above the 100-year flood. They're going to have it closer to 9 inches above. So we get into very minute elevations here, but the intent is to improve flood resilience of the structure.
That variance comes from the city or the Scenic Riverway?
The floodplain issues come from both the city and the state.
Okay.
The riverway issues, again, are both from the city and the state. So there's kind of 4 major approvals, 2 of which will come back to you at your June, the 2nd June meeting, I believe. Mm-hmm. The other 2 will go to Board of Zoning Appeals. All right.
So just with that, do you want to see what it's going to look like? So right now on the east side, there's that big metal awning canopy. We're going to tear all of that off, and starting on the south, we're going to have this part. It's kind of hard to see on this, but this part will pop out about 12 feet, be all brick. This piece in between will be a metal panel over the existing block, so it'll be back, and then this other part would be more of a tan brick that'll be out, and then this main part will be out a little bit further and taller out of a red brick, and then it'll step back as it goes to the corner. This will just be all kind of like a steel canopy that'll have new tenant signage above it.
Are you adding tenant space or?
No.
No, okay.
No, all of it except for this space right now is currently occupied. So
Right.
we wouldn't be adding, we're not adding any square feet to it.
That's a heck of an improvement for that.
No, absolutely. No, it looks great.
And then
Long time coming.
well, this side is, we're going to punch a bunch of openings and put some steel canopies over it. And along the entire way, in order to make that dry line access, we're going to have about a 12-foot wide boardwalk, basically, along the whole west side with all the access into the tenant spaces and stairs and ramps and accessible from the new parking lot.
So will there be any, I mean, because this is a side that faces a river, right?
Yeah.
So will there be any more pop or color or signage, or I mean?
I can't support that building now. I'm sorry, Mr. Zeller, I really like what you guys are doing and trying to do, but I challenge you that that is the front of your building. not the street side. And that you should really put more architectural detail into the back. It's going to be so evident from the river and everywhere else.
Right now, it's
I know
basically
it's
the
ugly
same
now.
color.
Yeah, but it isn't as nice as it's capable, I think, as you guys are capable of doing.
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment. It's a big, huge rectangle, this building. And there's only so much you can do, there's only so much lipstick you can put on a big, huge rectangle. So the back of the building now, I think you'll agree that when the additional windows were installed, that helped quite a bit, because it used to be one solid plane of concrete block, right? So because of all these other issues that we're working with, and because of the height of that building, what we're trying to do is add additional windows, and then the architectural detail of the awning, we're trying to also, you know, spruce it up a little bit. But compared to what I consider the front or Main Street, I just don't think that we can pull off. We've played with the idea of doing something on the corner that was reminiscent of, say, the old grain silo that was in town. I mean, Dan will tell you
Hundreds of.
hundreds of renditions. Now, we do have on the end, we are playing with I don't want to call it a corrugated metal because it's not. It's kind of a tin shingle, if you will, scallop that's reminiscent of some older buildings. So we're trying, but there's a balance there. So I think this picture doesn't reflect it. Frankly, I don't even think the rendering of the front fully reflects what I'm hoping to accomplish with the building. With the material of the brick, and then what you don't see is the definition. So we pull that building back in spaces so that we don't have one long continuous line. So I appreciate your comments, and fingers crossed, I think we'll exceed your expectations, and I think you'll be very pleased with it in the end.
Nice to hear you say that.
Color will also be an issue. You know, right now this is shown as kind of a gray, and I don't think that really lends itself to what the final look will be either.
Okay.
So I appreciate your comments.
Will you be doing anything with the signage that's on the corner there of Buckeye and
Yeah,
Second?
that comes off of there. That's a whole other design challenge that we spent a lot of time with. I had a crazy idea to incorporate a old-fashioned water tower of some nature, and we've had to eliminate that. That was exorbitant in cost. But I'm not proposing any monument on the corner. I'm a big believer that your signage on the building is the most effective signage.
So you may take that down?
Oh,
That's
that
right
comes
there?
down.
Okay. And then will that be landscaped, or that's all part of parking? And
We'll have some landscaping there. There is a possibility for a future detached building, a very small building, approximately 2,000 square feet, kind of modeling that after an old gas station that was in town. Nothing that we're asking you to contemplate right now, but yeah, I think you'll like it.
And we're exploring changing the traffic signals there so that boom arm would potentially come out right where or the pole would be right where the sign pretty much is right now. So right now we have lights.
Right in the middle of
Yeah, it's a bad spot. So the whole thought is let's get the traffic controls out of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Probably a best practice, and then
And we're repairing the sidewalk as well. There
Okay.
are elevation changes right now, so you couldn't hardly ride a bicycle down there. You for sure couldn't take a wheelchair down there. So that all gets cleaned up and repaired as well.
And then as you're going down Buckeye, the no stop if you're taking a right turn, will that continue to stay a no stop if you're taking a right turn?
it's
Or will you look?
to be determined with those
I mean, just with those
stalls that
additional parking.
close.
That's a city issue, so.
Yeah, with the stalls that close, we're going to take a look at that. Glenn, our
But that's on the
traffic
list.
engineer, will
Okay.
absolutely look at it.
Okay.
That, you'll get a chance to talk about that based on an old easement issue that we have to resolve as well.
That's
Oh,
the other
okay.
piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's no shortage of challenges.
Well, thank you. It's a great opportunity to really make a huge improvement. I mean, right, very close to the gateway of,
It's got great bones. It's just, it's been underutilized for a long, long time and
Right.
hasn't been, I would argue, maintained correctly or managed correctly. And I think that, I know we can do that.
and it appears that occupancy has been pretty stable for the most part,
Yeah.
except for maybe, one or two on the far end there, but.
Yeah, and I think they're all, service providers that the community needs, and they're primarily local businesses, so
Yes.
we're working with all of them.
Right.
The athletic club is a partner in the ownership group.
Oh.
There's actually 9 local families that are part of the ownership group on this one. So you've got people that are, heavily invested
Right.
and pretty passionate about this project.
Great, thank you.
I'll move we approve the concept development plans.
I'll second it.
Motion and second.
With all the staff recommendations?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on a resolution to amend the comprehensive plan adopting the Hudson Waterfront Vision Study.
So sorry I had to bring this back. It's a procedural item, just to formally amend that comp plan and add it as an appendix. We're asking for approval of the resolution.
I'll move to approve. From Parks.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on retention pond and heritage greens for the plan commissioned by the Public Safety Committee.
Randy, I think you were most familiar with this issue. We have gone through the files. What this is there's a retention pond that basically straddles the border of Heritage Greens and Red Cedar Canyon. And the pond itself there's easements, but the pond is located on private property. So it's an easement to the homeowners association, Heritage Greens, for that pond. The problem is it's become somewhat of an attractive nuisance. You've got, bugs, smell, you get in the winter, kids running around on it. You also have, as a last minute addition, as far as we can tell, there was a berm installed in a portion of it in order to keep it holding water. The pond wasn't necessarily designed to be a wet pond. But that berm that was installed backs the water up so that there is somewhat of a water feature, which was, I think, great the first couple of years and then has turned into something else. At least that's what we're hearing from some of the residents in the area. And correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, the charge from public safety was to look at this and to determine, A, who's responsible for maintenance of this, and then how do we find a resolution?
Right, and it was about, bottom line, who pays to fix it? And was there something in the development plans or agreement that they either expired or is applicable?
We pulled it out. We maintain that it's Heritage Greens, the homeowners association is responsible for maintenance of that pond.
Okay.
It's a private pond. So, and it's on, is it ideal? Would I recommend doing that in the future in developments? No. But it is what it is, and we're dealing with the issue. I have a meeting with Heritage Greens here on a separate issue, but I plan on bringing this up and having a discussion. I wasn't sure what action specifically you wanted on the item other than some background.
I wanted that, and I wanted you folks to understand and to find out if anybody remembered whether or not there was an agreement in place that would pay for that. Because now they're trying to use public safety as a trigger to have the city take care of the issue. And there is some concern with the kids that play on the pond or around the pond, or mosquitoes and disease, whatever. But it should fall back to the developer or the association, is my opinion, that Mike just said. So.
That being said, we have done some maintenance in the past, I understand, in that pond. We got a temporary construction easement to dig some
That was a
things.
goodwill gesture, I
Okay.
think, in the past.
Yep.
And it probably shouldn't have been done, but that's how we do things.
Good neighbors.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But you're finding that does go back to the homeowners association?
As best
or
as
the
we can tell, in the research that we've done, I was able to even get Liz to kind of give a little background on it from her perspective. We pulled out all the files. Yeah, so that's where we're at, and we'll communicate that with the association. I think it just needs to come into a maintenance agreement.
Sure.
Update that easement and maintenance agreement, and then figure out who's responsible for things, and then identify if that berm needs to be there or if it doesn't need to be
I
there.
think the city needs to get out of the way
Yep.
and not be pulled back into it.
Good. Consider the gentleman.
So do you need any action on this? Or?
You got something to say?
Yes. First of all, Mike, when is that meeting? I'm Hugh Gwynn, Hudson, Wisconsin. I am a member of one of the 4 sub-associations in Heritage Greens, and then there's an umbrella master association under all of those. This property, at least from Tribute, my understanding, I haven't gone to the courthouse yet, but my understanding is the property that comes out from the 4 catch drains that are on, is it Prospect? There's 2 on either side of the side street, 2 on either side of Tribute, flow under the under Tribute and then come out of a grate, and there's rock lining that goes west towards the pond area. My understanding is that strip in between 2 homes is owned by the Master Association. My understanding, and I haven't gotten a plat out yet. I was going to do that this afternoon, but I had a few other things to do with short notice of the meeting tonight. My understanding is the pond area is developed by easements on the lots that come down to it.
Yes, on each, not to it, through it.
Through it.
Yes.
But on the south end of the pond, there's a berm that prevents the water from going into a retention pond, which when I walked it after work this afternoon, looks like it's probably in the Red Cedar Canyon development.
Yes, a portion of it, yes, probably is.
And the drain for the water to go through is practically on top of the berm area. So I would guess, given the developed grass on the Red Cedar Canyon overflow area, I'll call it, probably hasn't been wet in a long time. And do you know, Mike, if there's any inflow from Red Cedar Canyon into their catch basin? I couldn't find one when I was...
I'm unsure. I'd have to check with the engineer and look at the drainage calcs, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe if the berm was eliminated, everything might evaporate away, and it would be a pond only in a
rain event.
In a rain event. And so it would be dry other than that.
That was I believe the original intent in the review that I've done was that berm wasn't there, and then at some point the berm was installed, and that's where the challenge arises. Where was that something that we approved, or was it not, and how did we arrive at the situation we are today? And now that I understand, kind of where we're headed with this, it'll be a lot easier to kind of hopefully find a resolution here.
I'm not here on any official capacity because of short notice. There's been no time for me to check back with my board, which is a member of the Master Association.
Yet, Hugh?
Yet. But I did check with Jean Connors, who's our manager for our association.
Yep.
And she indicated that, to the best of her knowledge, where the grate comes off of the street and where the runout is to the pond, that piece of property is owned by the Master Association.
Correct.
But
probably not any of the rest of it. It's
Correct.
She thinks it's easements on the individual lots for a pond area, and I would want to look at the plat.
And each of those easements, who those easements dedicated to, or is there a maintenance agreement?
Don't know.
That's-
Yeah.
And that's
Yet to be determined.
so, yeah.
And that would be part of the single family, because it's in the single family area.
Yep.
So,
Sounds like a tar baby, once you pick it up. There's no putting it down. It's all interconnected and.
And like I said, and again, the reality is this has been an issue, it sounds like, for a few years now. From a staff perspective, it'd be nice to just figure out a resolution that works for everybody. That's why we're here as a city, and move on to the next berm or pond.
you said you were meeting with people from Heritage Greens.
Yep.
Do you know when,
Tomorrow, I believe, or Thursday, I think.
or do you know what time and who's invited?
It's specific to a different issue.
So you're just adding it.
I'm just adding it to the agenda of items that I want to talk about with that individual.
Okay, so it's not any one of the boards or anything?
It's the manager, the Gene, I think, or the Connors.
Gene Connors, okay.
And I'll have to look at, just give me a call if you want to, like I said, I'd have to look at my calendar, look at the time and
Sure.
find out when.
Okay.
and how.
All right,
But yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Hugh.
So no action, right?
No, I think Mike knows what he wants to do, right?
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
I just wanted to bring it to our attention.
Okay, we're good?
Thank you, Randy.
Discussion and possible action on possible additions, revisions to section 255-18, the St. Croix River Wild and Scenic Riverway and Shoreline Protection Overlay District of the City of Hudson zoning code.
David, do you want to,
Yeah, I can jump here. I don't think we're going to ask for any sort of action tonight. I think it was more for discussion purposes. These would be ordinance changes, so you have to do the readings and all that sort of thing. But we've gone through a couple of Riverway reviews now, and the code is brief. Your city code is brief, and it refers to a much larger state code. There are some things in your code that just don't address all the things that really need to be addressed. For instance, the state code talks about conditional uses and variances. Your code talks about permitted uses. It doesn't really say anything about conditional uses and variances. I think clearly the intent is that you will approve conditional uses and variances under your local code that are addressed in the state code. I think we should clarify that and what the process is for that. So there's a couple of changes that I would suggest is to just kind of clarify the process and kind of more fully embrace the provisions of the state code in your local code. There's a number of items which are pertaining to lot size, lot width, where the state code allows the city to be more restrictive or less restrictive, well, more restrictive than state code. It just leaves it as essentially a blank in the state code. With the way your ordinance is currently written, you don't provide those. You don't provide a minimum lot size. You don't provide a minimum lot width. So we should fill those blanks in. I use the example of it's a Mad Lib. We have a blank line in our code that just isn't filled in yet. So I'm proposing to fill those in. Another item that I think is worthy of some discussion is in the state code for developments, they can follow the lot size, they can follow the lot width. They can also do what's called the cluster development. So they can take, if you have, let's say, a 100-acre development, and you can get 90 lots on that 100 acres, the code will allow you to take those 90 lots, squeeze them down in size, and put them somewhere inside the development and leave green space around or between to kind of provide a little more natural area. You get out into the town of Troy and the town of Hudson, there's some giant 5-acre lots that are completely mowed. And the intent, I think, of the clustering is to try to eliminate some of that, so you don't have these giant lots, especially in the rural residential code that sometimes comes into play in annexations. In the code, in the state code, you're allowed to go to 150% of the density of the zoning district. So if you could get 90 lots on 100 acres, you could actually go to 145 lots, 135 lots. And you still have to put them smaller, you have to put them off to the side, and you have to keep green space, but that 50% increase is allowed under the state code. So we could keep that, we could leave it alone and not address that item, or we could look at making changes to that, either go to 125 or 100%, something to reduce that density. If you look at your PRD code says that you can do the same thing, and you call it slightly different than clustering, but you can do smaller lots and you can do them off to the side. In the PRD code, in the local PRD code, you're allowed to mimic the overall density. So again, if we look at 100 acres, you get 90 lots. We'll allow you to do 90 lots off to the side and leave a larger green space around it. So the PRD code doesn't allow this increase in density, whereas the Riverway code does. Now, where it really becomes an issue is in the rural residential, where the lots are 1 acre instead of 10,000 square feet, as you would normally have in an R1 or R2 zone. So I think it's worth a discussion. Doesn't need to be something that has to be decided tonight. I know there's a gentleman here that would like to speak on it as well, but I think it's worth having a discussion on whether you think that we should allow that density increase in the Riverway area. So
I have a question. Why all of a sudden, we don't even have the land in the city of Hudson yet, so why all of a sudden are we going to do some house cleaning on a ordinance that all of a sudden became on the radar because of a potential development? What was the thinking? Why?
Yeah.
What triggered this?
Well, I'd say 90% of this was things that as we went through Monarch and as we went through RCC, River City Center, are items that I just think we need to clear up. I think some of the conditional use and the variance stuff needs to be cleared up in your code. As far as the density goes, while we're talking about changes to it, I think it's worthwhile to talk about that provision too. If you folks would like to leave it at the 150% of what the underlying Riverway is, that's a decision that you folks can make, certainly. You can't go more because DNR would have a problem with it, but you conceivably could go less.
Okay.
Do we have anything that would ever affect?
Well, I think anytime, the density piece specifically,
Yeah.
I think, well, you're going to have pending annexations, or annexation one is
But
pending.
in the Riverway?
Yep, a portion of one annexation that's pending right now has a
Okay.
portion in the Riverway.
Yep.
You would look, and that would be specific to the small town,
Rural residential.
rural residential, sorry. And then if something came up in downtown Hudson where it was, or somewhere along the river, in the Riverway, that somebody assembled property and wanted to do more clustering, that could happen too.
So if we were to be talking about condominiums down along the river, pick a street, can't think of the names of the street down there, the Gagnon
First Street.
property.
First
Gagnon
Street would be-
property. First Street, but I mean between
Commercial.
lots, yeah. Does this ordinance affect that? Or does
That's what I'm searching for.
the
So
state
does that
statute?
affect
It would
the old
depend
grain
on,
elevator site? or-
Specific
Right.
to the small town, not to the rural residential. Because if land is to be annexed in, it has to stay with what the designation was when the NR 118 drew its boundaries. You know, whenever that was, 2004.
I think it was. Yeah.
So that has to stay. When we bring something in, it doesn't revert, it doesn't switch over to small town. It stays rural residential.
To the mayor's question,
Yeah, I did-
we were
didn't
doing
ask.
something down on First Street with a big project.
Do we need to do anything in order to accommodate a development down there?
If you,
Does this impact, what we're talking about right now, does
Yeah.
this impact?
In the city right
Development.
now.
yeah, well, I'll address part of it. So if it's a B3 or a B4, which is what Monarch was, you get into a conditional use permit that is allowed multi-use, and so you wouldn't have this issue there. It would be more of an R1 type of a thing.
Are you talking about housing specifically?
Right, but on those lots, what's it
Currently
zoned
zoned? Oh, I'd have to look. I would imagine probably B3.
B3. And so a B3 zoning,
You get into the, in that sort of situation, you have a mixed use, commercial, you know.
Different criteria.
residential
So,
up on the-
no,
then
that
you
wouldn't
do-
be applicable in that scenario. It'd be applicable if they rezone to strictly residential.
the only thing
or
we're
something.
talking about right now is the Lee property. Is that right? I mean, is that the only thing that would be impacted by this, that the city either owns or is contemplating annexing?
Currently.
Or not owns, or
Currently.
yeah, currently.
In the limits.
Currently, yeah.
But there are certainly circumstances as you go north out of downtown and conceivably south of Lee where you could, this would impact. If you went north of Vine and, I don't know the streets in that area, but north, 3 blocks north of Flaz, for instance, where it's single family residential, you could conceivably see someone that would aggregate some of those parcels and would try to do a very dense.
So
detached town.
if we were to, and I apologize, I'm just trying to feel my way through all this with all the designations and everything that we just heard. If we were to, so we do Lee property and then go farther south, I don't even know you can't, you got the Y camp
Y
there,
camp.
and then you're into Troy, right?
Yeah, and then you're in the YMCA.
Well, I know, but the YMCA first and then Troy. So, I mean, Lee property is essentially it. We're not going any farther south.
Unless we go on the other side.
Unless
of
we're going to do a
River-
River Falls and
Rivercrest,
and start leapfrogging and.
unless we go to the other side of the school.
But Rivercrest would not be involved in this, would the other side of?
Only if you strung south of Rivercrest and then got a ways out. I mean, that's
Are they impacted by the national?
You'd have to get all the way.
No.
The only
No, they're
next
not.
parcel would be, as you go down there, would be the equestrian center.
correct.
The YMCA has next to Lee, then you've got the equestrian center, you've got Gagnon, and then you got one house and the Carpenter Nature Center. And then you're at the road into the cove. So we really wouldn't be expanding
Not on that
any
side.
further down on Lee,
But the other side wouldn't even be impacted.
and that
by
wouldn't
it.
be impacted, so. And thinking of the River City Center building, it's a city block. Under current housing, they would be allowed to put X, if it was
R1 or whatever.
If it was R1, you could put so many
Yep.
on there. But if you condensed them all to the front half of the riverside half of the lot, leaving the other part open, could you get 150% of that number there? Would it be a larger number?
You could under your Riverway code, but you could not under your PRD.
Okay.
That's where there's a little bit of a disconnect
Yeah.
between, and this is not uncommon, between a local zoning and a state law. There's kind of by definition, you're going to have, they're not intending to do the same things. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect there where the intent of my suggested change would be to kind of line those two up. So on the flip side here, I think it's worth noting that there's 5 communities that are subject to NR 118, 5 municipalities. St. Croix Falls, Osceola, North Hudson, Hudson, and Prescott. All the others, and including yourself right now, all use the 150% density, the increase of 50%.
So, and the others have reduced it.
The others have
to
left it at
something less-
150%.
Less than that. And what,
Sorry, go ahead. Finish.
how far, I mean, so what are they at? 100%?
No, they're all at 150%. They've
They're all
left
at-
it what the state code has said.
Same as we are.
Correct. Yes, everyone right now is at 150%. So we would be the oddball if we went out to, we went down to 125 or 100%.
Which we aren't recommending.
Right.
It's discussion.
Yep.
Okay? That's the, if we want to be consistent with everybody else, then we should,
Yeah.
you know? But it's one of those things that we felt at least warranted some discussion as we deal with growth.
That and the law of unintended consequences of choosing to do something now that we would regret a year or 6 months from, or whatever in the future, of not realizing that
Yeah.
we did it.
Okay. Nick,
Mayor. My name is Nick Vivian. I practice law in Hudson, and we talked about the Lee property. I represent the developers who intend to develop the Lee property. And so this, of course, is of great concern to us. And we've been operating under the 150% paradigm. It's how we approached the deal when we negotiated it. It's how we've approached our plans. It's what we've discussed with council members. That being said, we understand that the city goes through its needs assessments and, you know, may determine that number isn't the right number. What I would say about NR 118 is that 150% for cluster developments within the Riverway District is a maximum. So the law says that you can permit up to 150% of the density allowed, subject to a conditional use permit. And so our request, or any request that comes in seeking density of more than 100%, up to that 150%, is still subject to approval and control by the City Council. And so ultimately, if you don't like our plan or any other plan that falls within that 100 to 150% range, the city has the control to appropriately condition the number of units or the number of homes that are permitted. I understand that this particular change has come about as a result of reviewing NR 118. It concerns me a bit that we're reviewing it during the process of a pending application, but I also understand that it's come up because the application is pending and it's the time to take a look at it. I agree with Dave's comments and certainly with Mike's sentiment that most of what's been proposed is not objectionable in the least. It's good cleanup, it's good policy. Your ordinance, frankly, could use a little work to make sure that the references cross and that you've got the proper references to conditional use permits and variances. However, when I take a look at the control that you already have with 150%, and the fact that the National Scenic Riverway goes from St. Croix Falls down to Prescott, that you've got the 5 communities that Dave has identified, and each one of those communities has chosen to adopt the 150% density subject to their own local control. To me, that seems to be a responsible way to control density within the Riverway District. And so what I would hate to see while an application is pending and while we're going through this process is either, number one, a change that takes control away from the city in determining density, or two, that we have an ongoing discussion so that clients like mine don't know where the ordinance stands and don't know what will happen. You know, we'd prefer to have the conversations with city staff under the current structure of 150% and allow the city to make the determination. And if the city determines that 150% is appropriate, fantastic. If the city determines that there are mitigating factors or controlling factors which require a different density number, that's fine. But under that current paradigm, you decide. And you know, speaking of the law of unintended consequences, I'd hate for the city to back off to an arbitrary number only to take control away from itself when really it's in complete control of what that density looks like today. So, you know, we're not in favor of the city changing the 150% density requirement from the perspective of making the ordinance stronger with respect to those other areas. It's a great move, and I think it will benefit the city and applicants in the future. But you control the density right now, and I think it's the appropriate way to deal with it. Thank you.
Anybody got any questions? Thanks, Nick. Anybody? Anything? All right, so no action tonight. Any prescribed? What do you want to do, Mike? Do you want to bring it back here, or what?
If you'd like, you know, I think I'd like to at least have some direction. Do we want to deal with it later? Do we want to do the 90% of things that we discussed? Is that density thing?
I don't favor changing it off of 150%.
I'm talking about the other 90%.
Yeah,
stuff.
to clean our ordinance up, most definitely.
Okay.
So do you want a motion tonight to do that?
Prepare the other things, sans the density.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion? Second? Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. All right, anybody have anything, any comments or anything?
I just wonder, why is it acting secretary, Emily? Isn't that supposed to be permanent or something?
Oh, well, Mike is technically the secretary.
We should put that on the
So I
agenda
have-
to officially make that happen.
Well,
I think it works just the way it is, really well.
she works hard.
Permanent
huh?
secretary
I like it.
for you. In fact, I like that a lot.
It's nice to have the packets back like this here when we get here.
Thank you very,
It's
very
too
much.
hard to do it on the computer, to be honest, so.
Thank you. I know it's a lot of work, but it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good I found out
Those are
the
the ones that
printer will staple everything.
Are you able to recycle this though for?
We're only going to go to 50%
Like when I
on
can
the
go
Lee
through
property.
it and like, oh, it's gonna come back.
We're only gonna go to
again,
50%
and
on the
pull it
Lee
out
property,
and
yeah.
bring it back.
So I don't write on it.
Yeah, we do, but everybody's chatting it up first.
Our envelope
And I
clean.
It's because they're not stuck in the door anymore.
I do miss that. I will admit that.
I missed that a lot.
My dog can't chew on it.
So it's not good at the time. We chose to be it.
I'm surprised that
Yeah, the office and drive
Mondale let that happen.
Drop these packets.
Mondale let
You
that
know, we dropped something off over to Denny's house. He put a thank you card in my door.
That was nice.
I'm not delivering packets by hand.
So we're putting that on the
Well
next
aware of
agenda to make her permanent?
No, keeping him permanent.
All right.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.